Hey everyone, welcome in and welcome back. It is Laura here, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to talk about how to pinpoint Plutonic and Karmic energy in a synastry chart, and I'm going to use my most recent connection as a learning tool, as a lesson tool today. And so this is what I do. I compare synastry charts. I can pinpoint karma. I can pinpoint Plutonic and Karmic energy, especially when it comes to these transformative connections. And if you have been awakened on the twin flame path, like I have, we will experience a lot of clearing connected to these Plutonic and Karmic soul ties in order to prepare us for that union with the counterpart. And so these Plutonic relationships signal deeply transformative connections. They are soul contract type bonds from past lives. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down today for you so you can see what I do at a deeper layer, okay? And so this is really how we can use astrology to ground in our lessons, our energies, the implications of these soul contracts, and become more spiritually aware of the energies around us and what they're meant to teach us. And all of this today is to kind of precursor all of you to prepare for me opening up a brand new astrology mentorship. And I'm going to host it on my own webpage in a Google Meeting setting. And I'm going to be offering 2 90-minute group astrology lessons each month in a Google setting class where I'm going to teach you how to read your birth chart. I'm going to teach you how to understand your placements, your transits, how to work with the transits, the cycles, and how to understand yourself and others more deeply so you can work with this cosmic energy instead of against it. And so I'm going to show you what I see up on the screen here, right? This is what I'm looking at. And so recently a soulmate connection entered into my life, was in my auric field orbiting for a little while on social media, then entered my physical reality. And it was a very quick connection. It was a very transformative, quick connection, I guess is the best way to put it. And so there was potential for long-term partnership. There was potential for commitment. There was potential for a soulmate connection. But the deeper I dug into the energies, the more I realized, hey, this is Plutonic. And I didn't pull the chart until after I pulled the plug, because I wanted to allow my intuition to guide me, and my intuition was spot on. And so the first thing I want to say to you is never doubt your gut intuition, because usually it's spot on. But if you are questioning a connection, if you are questioning, hey, is this twin flame? Is this soulmate? Is this Plutonic? Is this a karmic energy that I'm working with? A synastry chart with me can definitely pinpoint exactly what is going on between you and another person. And it doesn't always have to be romantic, but soulmate romance connections are definitely my specialty as a twin flame coach and guide. And so what you're seeing here is my synastry with his synastry. And so I am all of the energy in the outer wheel. He's all of the energy in the inner wheel. And so the very first thing that stood out to me in this synastry chart reading was Pluto conjunct Pluto. You can see on the screen, his Pluto is pretty much exact conjunct my Pluto, and also exact conjunct my fortune, because in my natal chart, my fortune and Pluto are pretty much almost in an exact conjunction. So this is part of a hallmark aspect, creating an intense karmic transformation. Whenever a Plutonic aspect is at play, it indicates a transformation. Okay, so Pluto conjunct Pluto, bing, 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 stood out very, very loud to me in this connection. And so usually this indicates a connection where both people are there to trigger each other's deepest shadow for that material growth in this reality. And so his Pluto sitting in my 4th house, or in his 4th house, his Pluto in his 4th house, and that's also where my Pluto is sitting, is in his 4th house. And this is happening in my 7th house of relationships. And so for him, this activation, this deep transformative connection is to show him where he needs to transform issues connected to home, connected to family, connected to his emotional foundations. And so me coming in, and so conjunctions are activation points. They are a magnetic energy. They're drawn to one another because it's such a similar energy. But this is where houses are important. This is where birth times are important when pulling a birth chart or a synastry chart, because the houses add a deeper layer of what is going on here. So for him, this is where this connection was to trigger a deep shift in his emotional security. And so there is this inner world activation for him to look at his unhealthy attachments connected to home, family, and his emotional foundations at the core from childhood. And with this conjunction happening in my 7th house, this is where I transform, right? With Pluto in itself in my 7th house, I transform and learn and grow through relationships. That is the catalyst of growth for me, are relationships and partnerships, romance, friendships, any type of relationships. And so this really did trigger an intense energy of growth for me, to recognize the patterns, to recognize the issues of power and control, to recognize the love bombing qualities that I saw right away, but I questioned, because that's what love bombing does. It creates confusion. And I could see where his emotional depth was trying to surface, but it was fluffed up with a lot of poetic words without matching these actions. And so this is also an energy in a trine to both of our Venus energies that are also in a conjunction. Venus conjunct Venus creates this instant attraction. It's like a direct attraction, but it feeds this Plutonic energy in this trine. And so with Venus, my Venus in my 4th house, and all of the Venus energy in my 4th house, and sitting in his 12th house, this is a clear indication of karmic energy, because it creates this, what I want to say is this deep magnetic attraction, but it's also challenging the desire, right? The attachment and the boundaries. And so with the Venus conjunct Venus aspect, and also to his sun, this is actually a really harmonious energy when it comes to love and romance aspects, right? Because it does indicate shared values, because both of the placements are the same. They're in a pretty tight conjunction, not an exact conjunction, but they are in conjunction to one another. There's like this natural resonance that we held towards one another, which is also why I kind of was leery about calling out the love bombing qualities that I saw, because I've recognized the pattern without really needing to like dissect it. But I questioned it still, because there was a relational energy between how we relate emotionally. But with his Venus in his 12th house and my Venus in his 12th house, this conjunction, this indicates spiritual or subconscious energy, right? The 12th house is the house of spirituality, subconscious. It's also the house of self-undoing for him, not for me. And there's a hidden karmic quality here that definitely had me questioning things. And so there was a karmic quality in how he expresses affection. It was very poetic. It was very elusive. His words were not really matching his action. He spoke of oneness, unity consciousness, and outer divinity matching the inner divinity. There was a lot of elusive poetic wording with the communication between us. And then with my Venus in my 4th house and this conjunction in my 4th house, the 4th house for me is my expression of love. This is how I ground in my home life, my emotional security, and my nurturing. And so I do need that mental connection for that emotional connection. I need stability in love. I need something grounded. I need something solid. And so although there was like a magnetic attraction at first, there was like a soul level drawing of energy. There was something creating tension. I felt the tension. And if you look on the screen, you can see where this conjunction of our Venus energy and his sun is also in a square to our Saturns, which are both in a conjunction, and it is in opposition to Neptune, which is illusions, right? And the fantasy. And both of our Neptunes in a conjunction. So the first indicator for me of karmic Plutonic energy was the Pluto conjunct Pluto. And then all of the other conjunctions to me screamed karmic, because this is an elusive type of energy playing out. And there was a lack of grounded expression. There was this trigger of trying to create intimacy very quickly through a mystical subconscious quality is what this person brought forward. But there ultimately was a Plutonic activation, and this activated soul contract themes for me. I can't say what it activated for him on the other side, but I did call this person out for the words not matching actions. And I just felt this person tried to create this emotional intensity, this magnetic attraction. And that was my karmic lesson around love and these power and control dynamics between masculine and feminine polarities. And so for me, this was a lesson in boundaries, right? This was a lesson in self-empowerment. This was a lesson in integrating these lessons with integrity. And so I also feel this would have triggered a lesson for him on the flip side, right? Because I'm here to master and ground in these emotional boundaries. And he has some deeply rooted subconscious patterns here that I feel were being activated. Now, do I think this is a bad person? Absolutely not. His moon is also sitting in the 12th house at 0 degrees 23. He really came in hot and heavy with this King of Wands archetype of wanting passion, wanting commitment. And that is a surefire indication of love bombing. When somebody wants to come in fast, they want to come in hot, they want to come in heavy, they want you to commit, they want to rush things. I was gifted, flowers were delivered to my house on the weekend from this potential romantic partner because he come here the prior week under the guise of wanting to purchase some of my products that I sell out of the home. And I say under the guise because something didn't feel right. I didn't trust my gut intuition, and I allowed myself to get swept away momentarily in the illusion of this mystical energy that was being brought forward. Now, was this intentional? Probably not, because we all have subconscious patterns. And that is the basis of his emotional foundation with his moon in the 12th house. And so this connection was brought into both of our realities, I believe, as a fated Plutonic connection, because the fortune represents fate, as a fated Plutonic connection to shake us, connected to our inner and outer world, because that was a phrase he liked to use consistently, was the inner divinity as outer as one. And I'm like, okay, I'm very spiritual, I'm very grounded, I'm very much aligned, I'm very much attuned, but there was such a lack of authenticity is what I felt in the messages coming through, and I doubted it. And so when there are highly magnetic energies in a connection, it can be destabilizing, right? Because it is there to pull the wool over your eye. And a lot of times one person is not conscious of their patterns, or sometimes both people are not conscious of their patterns. And this is where awareness, I feel, of how to work with astrology can help you ground in these boundaries, because actions not matching words is manipulation, whether it's intentional or unconscious. And if there's inconsistency coming from a masculine archetype and you are the feminine, or if there's an inconsistent exchange of the masculine feminine energies, this will activate a highly negative path. And so that is what I felt starting to kind of unravel in this connection before I pulled the synastry. Because like I said, I'm open to receiving. I'm ready to receive that match, that person. And oftentimes right before we receive the union of the divine counterpart, we are tested the most, right? And so this connection was ultimately fated, and it was designed to reveal these patterns on both ends, not just to create the illusion of romance, but it was a connection to ask us both to grow beyond these patterns. It's very clear. And so there was the risk here being presented to repeat the old karmic loops and the old patterns. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper here, because the Saturn conjunct Saturn energy is pretty significant. The Saturn conjunct Saturn is sitting in his 4th house, along with the Pluto conjunct Pluto. Once again, this energy in my 7th house. So there was a lot of 4th house, 7th house, 12th house energy. Saturn in my 7th house is really saying, hey, growth comes for me through partnerships and relationships. I'm here to learn boundaries this lifetime, right? Because I'm a 7th house Virgo, and it's all about service. He actually asked me, what is my love language? My love language is acts of service. His love language is physical touch. I don't have any desire to be physically intimate with somebody if they can't match my love language of acts of service, because acts of service shows responsibility in relationship, right? And that's what I'm here to learn, is the boundaries and discernment in relationships. And with this Saturn conjunction in his 4th house, once again, it's connected to the home. And so his growth comes from emotional connections, right? Because the 4th house is emotion, and is here to trigger the foundations of the family that maybe aren't working. And so for him, it's all about personal security. It really isn't about the bigger whole, is how I see that. And so with this conjunction, the universe is saying we're both being taught a certain level of discipline, because both of our Saturn energies are in Virgo. It's a lesson in commitment. It's a lesson in how do you navigate long-term emotional responsibility, right? And so there was a seriousness here, and there was the potential for long-term commitment. And he wanted to come in with this, with these poetic words of this not going to be casual, this not going to be fleeting. And the second I didn't kind of play into the reciprocal poetic responses or the chasing energy. I'm not a chaser. I'm not a chaser at all. He pulled back, and then I felt the heaviness. I felt the approach quickly shift. And I don't know whether this was conscious or not. Now, like I said, I don't think this is a bad person. He has told me he's experienced an awakening, but I do feel there's still a very challenging lesson here that both of us probably needed to learn. And so he created this idealism, this dreaminess. You see Saturn in that square to both of our Neptunes in a conjunction, and it's also in that square to Venus. That's also in that conjunction. And so he wanted to create a dreaminess and idealism around love, and trying to pull the wool over my eyes like we had the same values. But there was a lack of grounded responsibility. There was a lack of words matching actions. And so my Neptune is in the 10th house of my career. I am here to bring forward ideals, new vision into the collective. My spiritual purpose is manifested in my career. And that's my life direction. That's my soul's purpose. That's my public role, is to be sharing this information with you. Now, his Neptune sits in his 8th house. So that is the house of death, transformation, intimacy, shared resources, and all of his deep psychological hidden layers. And with this square energy, and with Venus and Neptune also in this opposition, there is a lot of tension here, because he tried to sell me a romantic ideal, but the reality of it was not grounded in reality. And so it created this tension, and I couldn't quite pinpoint it until I actually read the synastry chart after the fact that I called things off. I canceled the date for tomorrow night. I felt something was off. I thanked him for supporting my business. I thanked him for the beautiful flowers, and I just didn't feel that this was aligned with my path moving forward. And that's okay. Connections that we come onto our path, not all of them are going to lead to long-term partnership or long-term commitment. And a lot of the times these are lessons for both of us. Life is full of lessons, whether it's good or bad, and we can be indifferent to these lessons. But his expression of love was to be dreamy, to be mystical, and to be elusive. And that was a red flag for me, especially with the 8th, 12th house energy at play here. And my desire for real partnership and values that I've grounded in didn't match his idealistic, dreamy, mystical, elusive nature. And that's just how it goes sometimes. And so the Saturn energy was asking me, do his words match the ideals that he's bringing forward? Was there actually structure? Was there discipline? And was there real world action? Because there really wasn't. There really wasn't. And so as you can see there too, my vertex is also in a conjunction to his Saturn and my Saturn. And so a lot of times I will have these karmic Plutonic relationships enter my life in order to teach me my own values, my own structures, and my own responsibility to the relationship to myself first. And so there's a pattern here. There is definitely a pattern here. It's karmic, it's Plutonic, it's Saturnian. All of these energies combined were to trigger deeper shadow work. And I wouldn't say that it was like deep shadow work. I think it was the karmic test, right? We are in the 999 portal as I'm recording this. And I knew that the door was going to get slammed shut on this. I just knew it. I went to bed last night and the energy was off and I felt it. I called it out this morning and I just knew I was closing this cycle today. And it was a cycle in boundaries and lessons about consistency versus fantasy. And that was a big lesson for me on this twin flame journey. And so, yes, there was emotions here. Yes, it was a little bit romantic. There was this intensity that he was trying to bring forward to create this magnetic pull, the Pluto, the Venus activations. It was a very challenging energy for me to navigate, I will admit, because I wanted to believe in the idealism. I wanted to believe in his desires, but there really wasn't a grounded reality here, okay? And so what I want to say to any feminines out there that might be experiencing something similar is a true masculine will have that grounded structure. They need to show you alignment through action. It can't just be poetic words. It can't just be idealistic words. Of course, who doesn't want to hear those beautiful, idealistic, poetic words? But let's face it, the reality is true divine masculine leads through his actions, his aligned actions. And when looking at this chart, all of these houses involved, there was a lot of personal and family foundations, partnership, relationship dynamics that were activated for this clearing. And so it wasn't just meant to be emotional. It was meant to transform the structure of our karma in this activation, okay? And so always, I want to say, look for words that match actions, right? All connections will reveal patterns. And we do this through living through the experience of these relationships, not through declarations of love, big grandiose declarations of love. We have to be aware too of any idealization traps that people set for us, right? That's that Neptunian energy. So I always want to say, like, look to the Neptune aspects, because Neptune wants to create this perfect image, more perfect than things are. And then Neptune also is asking us to maintain those firm boundaries. When we are fully rooted in our presence, in our divinity, in our wholeness, the feminine energy is meant to receive. It's not meant to chase, and it's definitely not meant to fix the pattern for another. You're here to recognize your own patterns and to move beyond them. Recognize when you're in a connection and karmic growth energy is there, and grow beyond it, because karmic Plutonic relationships, they will feel intense. They will feel like, oh, there's a past life energy here, and then they will quickly turn heavy, okay? And these connections are meant to catalyze our growth into deeper self-awareness, so we can have that relational re-evaluation of our own patterns, okay? And so there's another deeper layer here too, as you can see, Jupiter in a conjunction to Jupiter, not exact, but pretty close there. And so this is another aspect that really needs to be looked at, because Jupiter is in my 6th house and is in his 3rd house. Our north nodes are also in a conjunction as well in those houses. And then you see my Mars sitting there as well. So this was a lesson connected to my purpose, connected to my mission. The 6th house is the expansion journey I'm on, and this happens through my work. So every time I do a synastry chart reading, every time I connect with one of you beautiful souls through a reading or healing or a teaching or a lesson, this is through my work where I learn and I grow, right? And this is part of my daily routines, my service, my health, my discipline. And so he came along to show me new ways to structure my daily life. And with all of this happening in his 3rd house, this was him learning to expand beyond his communication patterns that he's brought forward into this connection with me. He's here to learn how to inform better or exchange communication better. And so yes, there was like a mental connection here, because you can also see his Jupiter in a trine to my sun in Taurus, and trines for me open up energies. It's harmonious energy, but there was this offering, right? And so I honestly felt there was a lack of mutual growth, lack of mutual understanding. We completely express ourselves polar opposite. Even though the energies look to be the same, there's a complete different expression between the two of us. I'm practical, I'm structured, I'm communicative, I'm focused. And for him, it wasn't quite the same. It was mystical, it was spiritual, it was elusive. And so there was a conscious effort here for me to realize we were not aligned with the same philosophies, even though it appeared that way at first, because we have a similar karmic pathway. And then if we look at this energy, the Jupiter conjunctions in sextile to his moon in Cancer at 0 degrees in the 12th house. And so there is an opportunity for him here, I feel, to start a new emotional cycle. There really is. And I do feel I came along to emotionally support that understanding for him. But I just felt there was a lack of him having that willingness to engage consciously with me. There was something very hidden. And so there is, like, sextiles create opportunities. And so I come along his path to open up the doorway opportunity for him to look at his hidden subconscious emotional patterns, because the moon represents emotional patterns. And so he's likely going to retreat into his little Cancer shell. And I do feel I'm here as a trigger of all of his hidden fears and to trigger this relational growth lesson for him, whether he chooses to go into the lesson or not. I'm not in control of that, right? Because everything is an opportunity. And with the trine to the sun, my sun in my second house of self-worth and self-value, he really shined a light on my self-worth. Knowing that my values and my worth and my time and my resources are precious, which is why I chose to cancel the date, because I didn't want to waste his financial resources and time, and I didn't want to waste my time, right? Because resources come in many forms. And so this was key to me really grounding in my worth and my identity and my value. And so he offered me a beautiful opportunity to go deeper into alignment, to go deeper into my conscious, grounded reality of what it is that I am creating. And so the North Node connections, although it is in a conjunction, there is an activation here, I just feel, for both of us on our evolutionary path. For me, it's connected to work. It's connected to my routines. And for him, it's connected to learning how he communicates and to expand beyond these emotional communication patterns. Whether he love bombs a lot of women, I'm not sure. But I did notice a huge portion of his friends list on social media was women. That was another red flag for me that I kind of ignored at first. And so there was a lot of red flags reinforcing my intuition, but I was still curious about the connection because it was here to catalyze growth on both ends, right? And it wasn't just romance. It actually wasn't about romance at all. It was really more about growth and awareness. And so the Jupiter energy adds the expansion in this Plutonic connection. There was like what felt like a philosophical resonance between us. There was what felt like a potential for emotional support, but there was such a karmic energy I felt between Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune. There really wasn't room for mutual growth together. It was all about learning and all about realignment. And so there was a lack of consistency in the presence of his masculine energy that I felt in his conscious action and in that grounded leadership. And you can't really pull much over my emotional and intellectual intelligence. I've learned a lot of spiritual lessons in my lifetime, and I've done a lot of shadow work since my awakening. And this karmic activation was very quick, was very easy, was very breezy for me to work through, because let's face it, we need alignment of words and actions, and that was not present, and it was not present right from the get-go. And so there was a lot of expansion potential in this activation. And when I put up those boundaries, the presence was withdrawn. And that's when we have to really ground in our higher consciousness, right? We have to maintain our higher truth, our higher consciousness. And so emotionally, I had to sit with that. Because it definitely magnified lessons for me, because I had noticed a lot of projection. And as a Lilith in Libra at 2 degrees 20, I am a divine mirror. I am the high priestess judgment energy, and I do bring in that mirror, and I do amplify that karmic intensity when it comes to showing exactly where lessons have been unlearned for people and the potential for growth that can occur if we do that shadow work. So the Mercury opposite Pluto too, my Mercury in Aries, I'm pretty bold, I'm pretty brash, I don't sugarcoat much when it comes to my communication patterns, and my Mercury is in my first house, and that also is in opposition to the Pluto conjunction. And so because my Mercury is in the first house and it rules communication, it rules my thoughts, my ideas, and this is who I am, there really was, I feel, an activation where my conversation that I brought forward with truth did trigger something extremely intense in him. I felt the separation of the energy, and I'm sure it felt confrontational for him because of the lack of integration of what he needed to learn connected to the Libra energy. And so I saw through the hidden motivations. I saw through the patterns. I saw through his unspoken emotional undercurrents. And I saw that through the elusive communication that he brought forward. And so the oppositional energy not only forced me to speak my truth, it forced him, I feel, to confront his shadow, because let's face it, relationships aren't built on poetic, lighthearted communications. There was definitely a misunderstanding in how we related to one another, and I had to make those boundaries clear. And with Venus also in the opposition to Neptune, he wanted that idealization. He wanted to sell me the dream. There was nothing grounded in reality connected to any type of romance, right? And so he tried to blur my boundaries, is what that felt like. And like I said, whether intentional or unconscious, he tried to blur my boundaries. He tried to create a fantasy, and I dissolved that into clarity rather quickly. And so he tried to sweep me off my feet. He tried to dazzle me by all of these sweet, loving, poetic words, all of this love bombing energy. And I realized what he was offering me is way out of perception from reality. He tried to create an emotional connection through romantic words, spiritual projections, and I realized his idealization qualities he tried to put onto me, and I saw the charm for what it was, and I brought myself quickly back into this true alignment. And so words, ideals, and emotions have to match reality, right? They have to match consistent action. And so how this all connects, because we do see the Saturn, Venus, Neptune square there going on. There's triggers here. There's a pattern between the 12th and 4th house for him, the 8th and 10th house, and the 4th and 7th house. There's deeply rooted patterns here connected to shadow communication, buried psychological truths, transformative discussions, which I tried to bring forward, but I felt the elusiveness of not wanting to deal with that transformative discussion. So I know I was asked to honor what I saw in my reality and the responsibility that I hold as a truth speaker and as a divine feminine. And he needs to be ready to look at navigating his desire, how he attracts somebody, and how he plays into his own unconscious patterns. And so I really have gratitude, I think, for this lesson. It taught me to not get swept away in fantasy or projection. And I'm really not shy about communicating, honestly. I'm not afraid of confrontation. I don't withdraw from confrontation, but it definitely made me look for the alignment of words and actions. And is this aligned? Is this responsible? Made me look at some deeper hidden patterns that I quickly mastered with discernment, I want to say. And so when we have grounded presence in ourselves, in our reality, when we know who we are at the core, we don't lose ourselves in relationships. And so that's what the love bombing energy tries to get you to do, to lose yourself in a relationship. I also want to touch base too. We do see Uranus, conjunct Uranus, and his vertex also there. So this was a fated connection that was meant to cross my path in these energies in divine timing right now with all of the retrogrades. And so there was a shared opportunity here for both of us. What he does with this opportunity is up to him, but a shared opportunity for change, awakening, and breaking out of these old patterns once and for all. And so Uranus is generational. It's also personal activation. And so it's for him in the 5th house. And for me, it's right on the cusp of my 8th house. And so for me, this brought forward a transformation in intimacy, and it's activated a deeper psychological change for me where I'm going to take this lesson, I'm going to teach people with it. And it, to me, feels like liberation from these patterns once and for all, especially during the 999 portal energy. For him, it is an awakening about his romantic expression, because the 5th house is short-term romantic contracts. I kind of got the impression of like a little bit of a Rico Suave energy with all of the multiple spiritual women he follows on social media. That was a huge red flag. I often wonder how many other women was he poetically sending words to. The flowers kind of threw me for a loop, because I thought, why would he invest in sending me flowers if there was a lack of sincerity? And so that's where I kind of got thrown for a loop. But when people come on hot and heavy right from the get-go, before even a first date, that's a huge indicator of trying to create an emotional connection and trying to draw you in. And so this really is a generational and personal activation for freedom. So whether he chooses to embrace the radical shift or not, that's not up to me. But this really does indicate a deep catalytic connection, transformative connection, especially connected to intimacy for me, and creativity for him, and personal freedom. And so this was both asking us to explore the unknown, and with Uranus also in a sextile to the conjunction of our Saturn energies, this bridges the freedom. It bridges it, right? It bridges the karmic structure. It bridges the karmic grounding. It bridges the karmic lesson. And so there was a disruptive energy to awaken the patterns, to break free from the patterns, to integrate the lesson. But both of us have to be consciously willing to step into breaking the pattern. And so this connection at first did feel very magnetic. It felt exciting. It felt like this is part of my path. This is part of my awakening. This is the soulmate that the universe is bringing forward, that I've been calling in, because the counterpart was not choosing to step into the role of union and divine masculine. But I do got to say, I think I avoided a lot of chaos here by recognizing the repeating patterns and putting a halt to it before it even got started. And so I just want to point out to you, when we go into these Plutonic, Karmic, catalytic connections, they feel intense. They feel like they're fated. They're meant to be. They are meant to be, but they're meant to trigger the shadow dynamics for us to become more aware. And so if anybody in these connections becomes reactive rather than conscious, it can create a very difficult energy to work through. So let me know down below what you thought about this lesson today. I am excited to work with you more with this cosmic energy, to create more success and love in your lives, to launch this astrology mentorship. So stay tuned, because I'm going to be sharing more details on how you can sign up for this very, very soon. It will be launched after the eclipse energy. So stay tuned, guys. But yeah, comment down below, like the video. Let me know if you liked this. Let me know if you're excited about the next part of my journey, and I will see you all again.